The day was January 20th, 2009, Inauguration Day. But there were other important things happening that day far, far away from Washington, like the fact that Israel was pulling troops out of Gaza that day after a brutal 22-day fight in Gaza. Today, 70 days after Inauguration Day, there is new reporting about the events leading up to January 20th in Israel and Gaza. The reports are from Seymour Hersh at The New Yorker. According to Mr. Hersh, quote, the Obama transition team helped persuade Israel to end the bombing of Gaza and to withdraw its ground troops before the inauguration. And while the Obama transition team was trying to convince the Israelis to end the Gaza war, Dick Cheney, the lame duck vice president, was trying to convince the Israelis that they shouldn't bother with the new guy, that the new American president would be bad news for their country. Quote, Cheney, who worked closely with the Israeli leadership in the lead-up to the Gaza war, portrayed Obama to the Israelis as a pro-Palestinian who would not support their efforts. And in private, he disparaged Obama, referring to him at one point as someone who would never make it in the major leagues. Obama will never make it in the major leagues, not like Dick Cheney. What is that? It's like hail on the chief instead of hail to the chief. Two things here. First of all, the Vice President of the United States was actively working to undermine the presidency that was about to succeed him with foreign governments. Second of all, there's a little bit of a silver lining here. Apparently, Vice President Dick Cheney was sort of bad at that. Obama wanted Israel to call a ceasefire and withdraw its troops in time for his inauguration. And if you remember, back to January 20th, that is in fact what he got. Joining us now is Barton Gellman, Pulitzer Prize-winning Washington Post reporter and author of the book Angler, The Cheney Vice Presidency. Mr. Gellman, thanks so much for coming on the show tonight.
My pleasure.
Since leaving office, Dick Cheney has said that President Obama is making the country less safe. Now there's this report that he talked down Obama to the Israelis. You are kind of a Cheneyologist. I have to ask you, if this reporting is borne out, would this behavior by the vice president surprise you?
Some yes, some no. It's not at all a surprise that Dick Cheney was in favor of Israel prosecuting the war with Hamas as long and as hard as possible. He felt the same way about Israel's war in Lebanon against Hezbollah a couple of years earlier. And he would say, I think, that if anybody is crossing a line, it's the president-elect, not yet in office, trying to conduct foreign policy, that Bush and Cheney are entitled right up until noon on Inauguration Day to be in charge of that. Whether he really disparaged Obama to Israelis as pro-Palestinian, it doesn't quite ring true for me. On the one hand, he is very happy to make his criticism public in an unusual way for a vice president after leaving office. But on the other hand, that doesn't sound quite like him. Frankly, it sounds, as someone who covered Israel for a few years, it sounds a lot more like an Israeli official spinning what Cheney said about Obama.
Why would, in the politics here, somebody who's covered Israel and somebody who's covered Dick Cheney, why would Israeli officials want this to be known about Cheney, would you think?
It would be less about Cheney than about Obama. It would be a sort of a shot across the bow. They're saying, A, we know that Obama had some trouble with American Jews who worried that he was not pro-Israeli. And B, we hear this guy's pro-Palestinian. Let's see what he's got. It's a bit of a challenge to Obama, I think, on Israel's part.
However, that would only work if people thought what Dick Cheney might say about Obama would be credible. And in this case, I feel like Dick Cheney's comments about the Obama presidency since he left office in particular have said, at least made a lot more news for what people think about Dick Cheney than what people think about Barack Obama. I have been surprised that Dick Cheney has made so many public comments as vice president and that he has been so critical of the new administration. Did you see that coming? Have you been surprised by that?
I guess I am surprised. I'm often surprised. I like being surprised. That's why I like being a reporter. Cheney gave about twice as many exit interviews as Bush did. And after Inauguration Day, Bush shut up, which is traditionally what ex-presidents do, and it's also what ex-vice presidents normally do. Cheney has come out and continued to defend his policies and to criticize any departure from them. I think it's just another sign of the vehemence with which he holds his views. It's a central theme of Angler that he's a true believer, that he really does believe the things he's saying. And he thinks he understands that the world is a dangerous, dark place that needs tough policies in response, that he understands that better than other people do, and that he wants to keep an oar in the water, which is one of his favorite expressions.
Do you get the sense that he might be constructing a sort of defense in the anticipation that he might either be formally charged with something at some point related to his war on terror policies, or that he might need to defend his legacy if he does see any hope of the policies that he's so publicly endorsed being carried on by any future administration, let alone this one that he seems to dislike so much?
I think that Cheney does not care very much what we think of him now. And I don't think that he thinks that people like me are going to define his legacy, or, all due respect, Rachel, people like you either. He thinks that historians decades from now are going to think he was right. And what he's talking about now, his purposes tend to be much more tactical, much more immediate. He is looking to plant seeds in the public debate. And if I were guessing, and here I am guessing, I'd say that he is hoping to put some things on the record that will enable him later to say, I warned that we were weakening our defenses. I warned that we were exposing ourselves to more danger. And if another attack comes, it would set the stage for, he thinks, a restoration of the policies that he supports.
Remarkable that a man so known for his promotion of the largest conception of executive power in modern American history is deciding to get there by being the first modern vice president immediately out of office to spend his time disparaging the current occupant of the office. It's just, he is the most fascinating person in politics and has been for a very long time. Barton Gellman, thank you for helping us understand him.
What happened is that Obama did communicate to Israel his strong desire that they stop the Gaza offensive. If you remember, the Israelis began bombing of Gaza in late December, and the bombing continued until right before the inauguration when it stopped. And I don't think there's any question that Obama's desire had something to do with it.
With the stopping?
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, a former aide to the vice president possibly confirming the worst while desperately trying to deny it. He suggested that Hersh's previous revelation that Mr. Cheney presided over a kind of executive assassination ring was, quote, certainly true. You will recall that earlier this month, Mr. Hersh claimed to have uncovered at least the outlines of a covert executive assassination ring that reported directly to Vice President Cheney's office. This afternoon on CNN, former Cheney National Security aide John Hanna flat out denying Hersh's account, calling it not true, before admitting that the salient detail of the story was certainly true.
There's clearly a group of people that go through a very extremely well-vetted process, interagency process, that have committed acts of war against the United States, who are at war with the United States, or are suspected of planning operations of war against the United States, who authority is given to our troops in the field in certain war theaters to capture or kill those individuals. That is certainly true.
What does that do to those who thought beforehand that Dick Cheney was only interested in helping himself, the 500 people closest to him, and a few like-minded people around the world?
Well, the conspiracies are always true, right? Especially when it comes to this vice president. You know, Cheney has unfortunately confirmed the worst feelings at pretty much every turn. And look, it's just a remarkable situation that you would have a sitting vice president trying actively to undermine the incoming president with a foreign power. I mean, you know, there was an old saying that politics stopped at the water's edge, but clearly this takes it to another level.
Hersh's current piece in The New Yorker is actually about Obama's foreign policy success in the region. The Cheney anecdote is actually a side thing that's sort of buried inside. Hersh wrote that the renewed Israeli-Syrian negotiations over the Golan Heights are now highly likely that would offer Obama his first and perhaps best chance for the engagement in the Middle East peace process. So Obama succeeds in getting Israel to stop bombing Gaza, and now he's on the edge perhaps of Israeli-Syrian negotiations, and he'll never be a major leaguer. How exactly?
Well, fortunately, it's not up to outgoing vice presidents or presidents, for that matter, to decide who gets into the major leagues. And, of course, this was Cheney who also said that Obama was somehow pro-Palestinian. Obama, in the middle of the campaign, said that he believed in an undivided Jerusalem. You know, if that's pro-Palestinian, then the Palestinians are really screwed. There is no rational behavior that can explain what Cheney did in office or how he looks at this situation. He has clearly convinced himself through some degree of paranoia that only he could save the country against some infernal terrorists, and everyone else was trying to weaken the country and massacre entire American cities. That's the only way you can really interpret these feelings that he has.
And to that point of that last clip of Mr. Hanna on the other network today, a Cheney aide who admitted that authority is given to our troops in the field in certain war theaters to capture or kill certain individuals. How exactly is that a denial of what Cy Hirsch hinted at earlier this month?
Well, it's a piece of legalese and an obfuscation, and it's only ironic that, again, casting back to 2000 for an administration that came in and campaigned against that kind of legal jargon, that they should be trying to revive that kind of argument now. I suspect that someone, if not Cy Hirsch and someone in Congress, will get to the bottom of this, and there will be legal proceedings.
They had better.